Welcome to Wonders and Miracles podcast, where we celebrate miraculous moments in everyday lives. I'm Liza Lawrence. I'm glad to have you join me as we celebrate wonders and miracles together. Okay, well, I am here with Chris today, and she's going to share a miracle story that happened about a year ago with the birth of her daughter, Emily, who had Trisomy 18. And I'm not very familiar with Trisomy 18, so I'm excited to learn more and to hear the miracles that took place during this time. So, Chris, thank you so much for being willing to share your story and tell us what happened.
Thanks for having me. I always enjoy opportunities to talk about Emily because I feel like that's the only way I can still parent her. So even though it's sometimes hard to talk about, I feel like it's a way that I can still honor her memory. So thanks for this opportunity. To begin at the beginning, July of 2018, I took a pregnancy test before church, and lo and behold, it was positive, and I was super excited.
What number baby was this?
This would make number 2. So we have a 6-year-old daughter. At the time she was 5, and she actually happened to walk into the bathroom as this is happening. And I don't want to tell her yet, right? Because like dad didn't even know yet, like this is just happening. So she sort of caught me red-handed. So then she hollers for dad. And then we all have this moment in the bathroom of, yay, we're having another baby. So fast forward a few weeks later. So I'm 13 weeks and I go to my OB appointment and he asks if I want to do genetic testing. And with Sydney, our first daughter, we didn't. We just felt like, you know what, if something's wrong, it's wrong and it'll be fine. And why worry the whole time? And what if it's a false positive? And And so then with this time around, it's been 5 years since I've been pregnant. I have ulcerative colitis. And so I'm on some different medication than I was on previously. With all of that, we're like, maybe this time we ought to do something, just, let's be safe. And so we started with nuchal translucency, which is where they do the ultrasound and they look at the back of the neck. And so that came back abnormal. But I didn't really think a whole lot of it, because it was kind of the first thing. And sometimes that's like, it's only just a tiny indicator, right? Like it's not a real for sure, this is something wrong. So then because that came back abnormally, I wanted to do a maternal blood test. And so the particular test that they did is called Panorama, where they can take mom's blood and then they can separate out my DNA from the baby's DNA and look at the chromosomes and then know kind of even more in depth what the issue is, right? So they do that. And of course, this is all taking like a couple of weeks each time, right? Like this is not just overnight, suddenly we have our answer. And that came back with an increased risk of trisomy 18. Like that was the specific chromosome that they were looking at. And so then we opted for a amniocentesis. So they start with an ultrasound. They call it a level 2 ultrasound where they look really in depth at like every part of it. And this thing took like 2 hours. I mean, it was a long time of just looking over every single piece of the baby that they could see and finding anything that they could find. And so just from the ultrasound alone, they found a lot of the physical markers for trisomy 18, which are usually things like clenched fist, where the index finger and the pinky finger kind of overlap the other fingers and the fist is closed. So they did see that in Emily. She also had a club foot, which is pretty common in trisomy 18. A lot of times they also have heart problems, holes in their heart. Which Emily did have, and then also cysts in the brain, which she also had. So wow. She had quite a few of the physical markers that they were looking for. So they were pretty confident before they even did the amnio that that's what it was. Mm-hmm. But the amnio would then tell them specifically which chromosomes, if it was just trisomy 18 or if there was another chromosome involved, what were we really looking at here? So like I said, I took the pregnancy test in July. In September, I think it was September 14th-ish, we got the final diagnosis that she had trisomy 18 and that it was a girl. And so we knew, okay, our kid has an extra 18th chromosome. All of these things are affected. And now what's the prognosis, right? So trisomy 18 does not have great odds. 80% of babies that are diagnosed in utero with trisomy 18 don't make it to full term. Of the ones that do make it to full term, only half of them are born alive. So they die somewhere in the labor process. And then of the ones that are born alive, only 1% make it to their first birthday.
Wow.
So as you can imagine, things were pretty dismal. Our maternal fetal medicine doctor said, you know what, just make the best of this time that you have. You don't know if the pregnancy is going to end tomorrow or at 40 weeks. You don't know. So just enjoy every moment that you're pregnant. Treat it like a normal pregnancy. Try to do all the things that you would normally do so that you can still have the experience rather than just wasting it being upset, And so we tried really, really hard to do that. Shortly after we got diagnosis, we felt like we really needed to tell our church family and tell everybody. And, some people like to keep things kind of close to the vest and not, it's a personal thing. We want to tell people and that's fine for them, but for us, we really felt like we needed to tell people. I am a huge extrovert. I knew that I wouldn't be able to fake that joy at church every Sunday, seeing people and they're asking, how are you feeling? How are you doing? How much longer do you have left? When are you due again? Do you know what you're having yet? All of the questions that you normally ask a pregnant woman are totally loaded questions for me at this point. And so we wrote a letter to our church family and we sent it out to everybody and just said, here's what we know. Here's how we feel about it. And here's what we need from you.
Wow.
And the support that we got was overwhelming. I was really surprised, I think the most, by all of the Me Too's. There was at least 2 other sisters who came forward at that point and said, you know what? We had a trisomy baby this many years ago, and here's what happened, and I feel ya.
Wow.
The things that you wouldn't normally know about people. And so I think that for us was a huge comfort, just knowing that other people got it. One of the other miracles I'll say, so my husband is adopted, and his adoptive parents had a trisomy 18 baby in 1985. So the fact that they had not only another loss, but the exact same diagnosis. And for me, going into this, once we got the diagnosis of trisomy 18, we really felt like it's going to be okay. Mom and dad know what this is like. Mom and dad are here for us. Mom and dad get it.
That really is amazing, that connection, that they had the same kind of experience before you guys.
Yeah, that was not a coincidence.
That's amazing.
Like I said, we just tried really to make the pregnancy as normal as possible. I still had a baby shower. It was a little bit different than a traditional baby shower, because at that point we knew, but we did a spa night. And we just had all my girlfriends come and, we said, if you want to bring a gift, bring something that is either comforting for our family or a way that we can remember Emily, whether it's, like a piece of art or a book. So not traditional baby gifts, but things that would be meaningful. And so we got all kinds of stuff. We got quilts and gift card to the movies that we could take our family just on those days when we were really feeling it. We needed to go veg out. We got some beautiful artwork, cards, letters, things like that. It was really, really cool.
I love that idea. Just an untraditional baby shower. I think that's beautiful, actually.
Yeah, it was awesome. So when we actually got to the shower, there was different stations. And so one station was a quilt square decorating station. So people could come and decorate a quilt square. Some of them wrote quotes or scriptures. Some of them drew pictures, but just decorated a quilt square. And then we had a nail station and a facial station and of course food. So it was just super fun.
I love that.
It was light and just amazing to have all my friends around and I was really happy that I still found a way to do something. Another cool thing that was support that I consider a miracle. A friend of ours she's a graphic designer and her family owns a screen printing business. Kind of early on, I said, hey, could we just make like some t-shirts for our family? Just, something for our family to just rally together and to have. She said, well, it's better to make more because it's cheaper, to do bulk. And so it turned into this fundraiser thing where, people that wanted to get shirts could donate whatever amount they wanted to, and it would go to a fund to help cover whatever expenses it ended up being. If she survived, then it would be medical expenses. And if she didn't, then it would be funeral expenses, but either way, there was going to be additional expenses that we hadn't planned for. And so this Emily Fund was created and t-shirts were made and their company ended up donating. All in total, there ended up being 3 rounds of shirts that were printed. Wow. And their company donated the first 2 rounds. I think there now are over 400 shirts in circulation. So from then on, it was Team Emily. We sent out a letter with it that said, when you wear this shirt, we hope that you'll think about people who you've lost in your life that were meaningful to you. It doesn't always have to be Emily, and that you'll do some kind of a service or just do something to make somebody else's day better in that person's memory.
I love that.
That has been a huge comfort to us, because we chose to share. That's one of the cool things that has happened because of it, has been not only for us to feel that support in a really tangible, visible way, but then to involve other people in ways that are meaningful to them too. This is all still, happening while we're pregnant. People are wearing their shirts. Fast forward through Christmas, my sister-in-law was pregnant at the same time as me. And so at Christmas, our family was all together. And really in 2018, all I wanted for Christmas was to still be pregnant. And so we got to take maternity pictures with my husband, and my sister-in-law and I were feeling each other's babies move. It was really fun to still have that normal pregnancy experience in a not normal situation. So Emily's due date was February 26th. Throughout this whole time, ever since we got the diagnosis, we were seeing maternal fetal medicine once a month. The closer we get to February 26th, the more surprised everyone is, right? Because by now, she has already beaten odds, right? That she shouldn't still be here. We get to her due date. It comes and goes, February 26th. We're now at 40 weeks. And I'm having conversations with my OB about, okay, now what do I do? Well, we didn't plan for this. We figured she'd be gone by now. And I remember praying to Heavenly Father, please help me know what to do. Because I felt like if I were to induce and she passes away, then I'll feel like I kicked her out too early. And if I let her continue until she comes on her own and then passes away, I'll feel like I should have gotten her out sooner. Right. So it was a really complicated situation, not knowing what to do that was going to be best for her. And I went to the temple and the prompting came, her days are known and shall not be numbered less. To me, that was the answer that I needed to know, that no matter what decision I made, Heavenly Father knew when it was going to be her time. And I needed to just do what felt good for me. And so we opted for the option that gave us the most control over the situation, which was to induce. So this is 41 weeks now at this point. And she was born on March 7th. That whole day, everybody wore their Emily shirts, and our Facebook page, our phones were just exploding with, you got this. Come on, Emily, you could do it. You know,
I love that.
Just, we love you. We're rooting for you guys. Emily shirts everywhere. She was born and was not breathing at first. And the nurse said the only option was chest compressions. I said, well, if that's the case, then put her on my chest. I want to have some skin to skin time before she goes. And so they did that. She was barely there. I mean, she was still alive, but not much. So I'm holding her on my chest and I'm rubbing her back, and Seth is right next to me, and the entire room was silent. I mean, everybody was just waiting to see what was going to happen. I'm, rubbing her back and just begging her to stay. I said, for the last few weeks, Sydney would run up to my belly and hug my belly and say, you stay alive in there, Emily. I really want to meet you.
Oh.
And so I told Emily, I said, sister wants to meet you. She's been begging you to stay alive in there. Now it's time to stay alive out here, because she was in the waiting room. I didn't want to traumatize her with labor. After about 4 minutes, she cracks open one eye and just begins to cry.
Wow.
And you could just hear and feel the sigh of relief that the entire room, it was amazing. We had a photographer from a group called Now I Lay Me Down to Sleep. They're photographers that are volunteers that come in for like stillbirth, for situations that you're not really sure how it's going to go, or the baby has already passed and you still want to do pictures. So we had our volunteer, Jennifer, on hand, and she actually got that moment on video. That is probably one of my most prized possessions, is that video. And sometimes I watch it and I'm still just in awe. I cannot believe that actually happened. From this point, Emily survives. She's in the hospital for 2 days. From the start, we said, we're going to let her call the shots. So for us, rather than having her at the children's hospital where they would put her in the NICU and then potentially talk about immediate surgeries or things like that, we were like, let's just see how she does and let her decide. If she ends up needing heart surgery, then, we'll cross our bridge when we get there, but let's not rush her into all of that stuff right away, especially because not knowing how much time we were going to have with her, we wanted to just make sure that we got as much time as we could. So she stayed in our room with us. We had neonatologists come both days and look her over, and both of them said, you know what, if I didn't know walking into this room that it was a trisomy 18 case, I wouldn't have known. She just was doing that well. So she came home 2 days after she was born, which was huge for trisomy 18. Like, that doesn't happen very often. And she was at home with us for 2 months. Wow. We got to go to the park together. They had dance parties in the living room. We had picnics in the kitchen. We had sleepovers with grandma. I mean, we did things together that I never imagined we were going to get to do. And so Easter Sunday rolls around and I got to dress the girls in matching Easter dresses and take them to church. And partway through, Sydney sits on my lap and she says, Mommy, I'm really snuggly. I don't feel very good. And I feel her and she's got a fever. Oh, geez. This is the beginning of the end. If Emily gets sick, it's over, right? So, I tried my best to keep them apart and not spread germs. And Sydney started to feel better. Then Wednesday happens. All day Wednesday, Emily is just extra fussy. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. Wednesday night, she and I are just up all night, just cry, 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 cry. I'd get her settled down. She'd be settled down for like 5 minutes and she'd start crying again. And so we just both have this huge long night of stress and sleeplessness. Finally, it's like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning and we both doze off, and I'm holding her at this point. And so we both doze off and I snap awake and think, man, I haven't felt her move in a little while. And so I sit forward, and as I sit forward, her head kind of lolls a little bit more than it should. And I panic. I know that something is wrong. And so I feel for a pulse and I can't feel a pulse, and I jump off the bed and I put her on her changing table. And by this point, my mom is still here. So I get her up and say, go get Seth. And he's in the shower. My first thought was, I need to do CPR. Now, prior to having Emily, I didn't want anything to do with CPR. That's too much responsibility for me. I don't want to know how to do that, because then if something happens, I have to do something about it, right? But when she came home from the hospital, I said, you know what, if I'm going to be her mom, I need to know how to do this, because it's going to happen. At some point, it's going to happen. And so in this moment, it just happened. It was like a machine. I didn't even have to think about it. And so I'm doing CPR and I'm working on her, and my mom calls 911 and the paramedics come. And by this point, I have gotten her back to crying. So the paramedics test all her vitals and everything, and she's essentially pretty good. And they're like, do you want us to call the ambulance? You want to take her to the ER yourself? What do you want to do? So we get to the hospital and find out she has parainfluenza, which is one of the viruses that can cause croup and RSV and like the really nasty respiratory stuff. So she's in the hospital for 11 days trying to get over this. That was a really, really hard time for us, just because, I wanted to be there with her, but I had Sydney at home. Long story short, she does good, she does bad, she does good, she does bad. And she finally at one point is just kind of done. She's tired. And the palliative care doctor calls us and says, I think she's making herself known. We had several care conferences with them during the 11 days that she had been in the hospital and discussed, what was our plan. And we continuously said, we're going to let her call the shots. When she's done, then she's done. Otherwise, we'll keep fighting as long as she's fighting. But when she's done, we're done too. That morning, she just was not doing well. And it was visible that she was tired. And so our family rushes up there, and we spent the rest of the day with her. So then the last big miracle happens. So we'd taken off her oxygen in the afternoon, and we were just kind of waiting, right? We're holding her, we're snuggling her, we're doing all of the memory making things, the footprint, handprint, and just kind of waiting. They had somebody come and play the harp kind of in the background as, soothing. We sang Families Can Be Together Forever and I'm a Child of God. I mean, it was beautiful. And only recently have I been able to even discuss this. If you had asked me a month ago to tell you this story right now, I would be a total wreck. You can thank EMDR therapy for that. I'm not kidding. I have been seeing a counselor every week before Emily was born. I think I started seeing her about 3 weeks before Emily was due. And we've been doing EMDR therapy for both the morning that I had to give Emily CPR and for the day that she passed away, because both of those were the most traumatizing things I've ever been through in my entire life.
I'm sure.
And EMDR therapy is amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But I'm grateful for that, though, because those last few hours with her were so beautiful and amazing, but I couldn't feel them because it was too overwhelming. Yeah. And now I can. So that therapy has given me those moments back.
I love that.
We've taken off the oxygen. She's kind of in and out. She most of the time she spent on my chest because that's where she was happy. Finally, as her breath started to get further and further apart, and we kind of could tell that she was fading. So Sydney said her goodbyes, and then our good friend took Sydney off to go to the play area down the hall while we were there for those last final moments. And I'm holding her, and I said, guys, I think she's gone. She hasn't taken a breath in a while. I think she's gone. And so a nurse comes over and listens for a pulse and can't hear anything. Doctor comes over, listens for a pulse, can't hear anything. And my husband asks, can I hold her? I said, yeah, sure. So he's holding her now. I'm just kind of sitting there going, okay, this is the moment. This is it. And so after about 15 minutes, we're all just kind of still sitting there, and, nurses are kind of in and out, but we're just being. I look over, and Seth has his hand on Emily's back, and his hand starts to go up like this. She starts moving again. And I'm thinking,
wow.
this really happening? Like, I'm imagining this. This is not actually happening. And it starts to get a little bit more rhythmic. And the palliative care doctor, who's still there at this point, is watching and says, yeah, you're right. You're not imagining this. I'm seeing it too. She's breathing again. And so she comes back over with her stethoscope, and sure enough, there's a heartbeat again. And she says, oh my gosh, and it's strong too. Her color starts to come back, and she's awake and looking around. And it was amazing. Like, and so we got to spend a whole nother hour with her. We passed her back and forth, and we just were amazed at what just happened. The doctors and nurses were amazed too. They couldn't believe it. I mean, they had declared her dead. They called the chaplain to come in and do his thing. It was her last gift to us, to spend that time together. And when she went for good the second time, it was so much more peaceful, because we were like, okay, we're good. You can go.
Wow.
We've since gone back and been able to meet with the doctor and nurse that were there and kind of talk. We were able to get a lot of closure talking with them from the medical perspective, which was really, really healing for us. In talking with them, they said that they still, on the pediatric floor, they still talk about the girl who died twice.
Oh,
That's Emily.
wow. That is amazing.
Earlier in the day, we had given her her blessing that said, it's your time, you can go, it's okay. And we had given her kind of permission, if you will,
Right.
sometimes,
Yeah.
When someone's dying, you kind of have to give them permission, not only for yourself, but also so they
Feel okay about
it. Yeah.
Has your life changed since this experience? So this was a year ago, and we're coming up on her birthday, March 7th. So that's just a few days from when this will air. How has it changed in this year?
That's a big question. I think probably the biggest thing is, I think my perspective has changed on a lot of different things. I am a much more empathetic person, especially when it comes to loss of any kind, but more specifically loss of children. I think also my perspective on time is different. And I feel like there are a lot of things now about me as a person that will forever be different because of this experience. Not only just, like I said, perspective, but I've really learned to trust God, because there was no other choice. In order to survive, I had to do that. That was the only option. So I feel like that is different. I think as a family, we're a lot closer.
Yeah. I'm amazed, honestly. I've never lost a child, but truly at your ability to process this and to be speaking about it in such a contained way. And it does speak a lot to your ability to trust, and I'm sure the therapy as well, but just to know that it's okay to grieve, it's okay to go through this process, and it's okay to still talk about it and to celebrate Emily's life and this whole experience and see it as an opportunity for learning and growth and love and all of those things. I think it's beautiful.
The other thing that I was thinking of as you said that is my perspective on grief. My dad passed away in 2012, so that was kind of my first real, well, I take it back. I've had losses before that, but that was the really closest one to me. But this kind of grief was so much different. And I think my perspective on how I grieve and how grief in general is perceived in the world has changed. I think a lot of times, especially infant loss, miscarriage, things like that, the grief is almost less acknowledged than other kinds of grief. And I'm not really sure why that is or where that comes from, but it's something that I've observed and definitely felt. I used to think that grief was something that it was a period of time that happens after the loss, right? And then eventually it's over, you get through that period of time, however long it is. And then there's an after. I'm learning that it's not so much a period of time as something in your life that changes and stays, and you just learn to adapt around it. Actually, there's a few of us moms who have lost infants. One of us whose loss is the oldest, so their child would be a teenager at this point, coordinated this group of us to get together every month. One of the other ladies shared a story that's the analogy of the piano. And that really made a lot of sense to me in terms of grief. So the story goes that grief is like a stage play. You're on the stage and you're acting and you're playing the part that's written, and it requires you to walk across the stage back and forth and interact with the other characters and do all of these things, and you're acting out this play, right? Grief is like somebody takes a grand piano and just plops it in the middle of the stage on that play, and it's not part of the script, right? And so you're trying to act out this stage play and get back and forth across the stage and interact with all these other people. But this giant piano is in the way and you keep bumping into it because it's huge and you can't avoid it. And then eventually you realize that you're the author of the script and you can rewrite that script to include the piano. So then you can work around it and integrate it into what it is that you're doing. And then eventually it comes to the point where you can just sit down and play the piano whenever you feel like. And your grief is in such a way that you get to address it when you want to, rather than keeping bumping into it because it's so huge and in the way.
I love that.
So yeah, it was really, really beautiful. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I needed.
Yeah, I love that analogy. I think that's very helpful. I love how women support women. I think that's such a beautiful thing. And when we share our stories, which I love that you shared your story and was very public about it, like, here's what's going on, other women could then engage and support and grieve themselves too, maybe go through their own grieving process in more depth and through your experience. So I just think all of those things are so beautiful, and kudos to you for being able to involve others in your journey. I think that's beautiful, actually.
Thanks. It was truly one of the only ways that we could have survived. Initially, it started out as a self-preservation, right? Like, I have to tell people because I can't survive if I don't, because I can't fake this. And then it became something that I never would have imagined. There for a while, I kind of felt like another friend used this analogy. She said, grief is sort of like getting an epidural. When the thing first happens, the event, you're kind of just numb, right? And everybody's there and they're supporting you and you're numb to the pain. And then after a few months, when people start to go back to their lives and things are kind of wearing off, your epidural wears off and you feel the full brunt of that pain. And it's hard because by then people have sort of gone back to what they were doing before you interrupted their life and they rallied around you, right? And fall was really a lot like that, especially kind of close to Christmas. I really felt like the epidural was starting to wear off and people were, going back to their stuff. And I used to get, like, people would text me, oh, this talk made me think of you, or I'm wearing my Emily shirt today, I love you, or hey, I saw a butterfly. That's the other thing. So Sydney, early on, we said, Sydney, what's the one thing that's going to make us think of Emily? What do you think is the thing that we should pick? So she said, without even missing a beat, she said pink and purple butterflies. And so ever since then, that's been the thing. And so now whenever we see a butterfly, it's Emily. So I started to feel like the epidural was wearing off, and those messages of the butterflies and stuff, it was sort of dwindling, right? I'd get less and less of those as time went on. So I started to wonder, have people forgotten? They've moved on with their lives and I'm still here feeling this. December was really, really hard with Christmas coming up. Like I wasn't expecting it to be because Emily wasn't alive at Christmas. And then I remembered what I was doing last Christmas, which was comparing baby bumps with my sister-in-law and taking maternity pictures and feeling Emily move. And she was there at Christmas. She just wasn't outside. So I saw an idea on Facebook where you still have a stocking for the baby and you have people write letters between Thanksgiving and Christmas. That whole kind of time period, you collect these letters from people for your baby. And then on Christmas morning, you read them. And so we did that. And as you can imagine, it was really emotional. And so in this feeling of the epidural is wearing off, to see that, yeah, people have gone back to their lives, but they haven't forgotten the impact that Emily made in their life, which was really beautiful and comforting.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing this. Anything else you've learned or wanted to share before we close?
Another kind of cool thing. So a couple of weeks ago, we were able to go visit some family in Southern California, and we went to the zoo, and they had a wishing well, and Sydney dropped a penny in the wishing well and said her wish, but she said it inside, and she said, Mommy, I can't tell you what it was or it won't come true. And I said, well, I bet I can guess. And she said, okay, if you guess right, I'll tell you. And I said, did you wish for a baby brother or sister? Because that's something we've been talking about. So she said, no, Mommy, it wasn't that. I didn't wish for a brother or sister. I said, okay, well, what did you wish for? And she whispers, Mommy, I wished for Emily. And I gave her a big hug and I said, you know what? Me too, sweetheart, me too. About 5 minutes after we had walked away from the wishing well, here come two butterflies flitting by. Now, we've been in Southern California where the weather is nice, and theoretically we could have seen butterflies before that point, right? Like, but that moment was when we saw our first butterflies of the whole trip.
I love it.
And I said, Sydney, your wish came true. There's Emily.
Oh,
Yeah,
see, I
really
love
sweet.
all these sweet little moments and miracles. I think that's just beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing your beautiful story. I really am honored to hear it.
Thank you. Like I said, I really love sharing about Emily anytime I can because I feel like it's the only way that I can still parent her from this side of the veil. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for listening to this miracle story. Please subscribe to my channel if you liked it. You can also find me on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify. And remember to notice and celebrate miracles everywhere, because the more miracles we notice, the more miracles happen.